And that's what makes motherhood worth it, right? Are those small moments as you try and navigate the schedules and the routines and the practicing and all that. Even in those moments when you're so frustrated, just to turn it off for a minute and connect and look into their eyes for just a moment and give them a hug.
What if the detours were the point? What if the chaos and curveballs of your story weren't distractions from your purpose, but the very soil it was planted in? Ann Bednar is a former Division I athlete, a mother of 7, and one of the most hilarious, wise, and grounded women I know. She's in the middle of a cancer battle. She has a son with a rare lung disease. And instead of letting these hard things define her, she uses them to refine her. In this episode, Ann shares how writing helped her find order in the chaos, how motherhood isn't a delay or a detour, it's the fire where so much of our purpose is forged. She also shares how the sacred moments often come disguised as the ordinary ones, right in the middle of it all. If you've ever wondered if you're missing your moment or if life was supposed to look different by now, this episode will breathe life back into you. Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
This is so fun to have you in the studio. It's actually really funny to be sitting in a studio with you too, because most of the time when we have hung out, we don't look like we look now, and we're not sitting in a professional setting. And so
kids climbing all over us.
So it's kind of hilarious. So Ann and I go way back. And I think anyone who's even known you for a little period of time would probably feel like they can say that too, because Ann just is who she is with everyone and anyone. The minute you meet her, you just get a flavor of this is Ann Bednar. And she's raw and authentic and vulnerable, and people are endeared to her so quickly. And that is a huge gift, and excited to share that. Yes.
I feel the same about you.
So we do go way back to just barely before COVID times, which feels like a lifetime ago.
It does. It feels like a while.
And Ann is the person I would attribute to getting me through COVID, for sure.
And I feel the same way about you.
So our family moved to Utah from Connecticut right at the end of 2019, rented a small house. If you listen to the episode with Sarah Jane, she kind of helped us find that house, some miracles there. And probably, I would say, looking back, maybe the most important reason we found that house was to connect with your family, for our family. And
it felt like a gift for us, straight from heaven.
So we moved 2 houses down, and then COVID happened, and we have all sorts of shenanigans we could share right now. Should we share any?
Sure.
I'm trying to think of which ones would be the best. The Bedsons.
Bedson male, right?
The Bedson male, yes. So their last name is Bednar's, ours is Jensen. So there was a secret male spot because at certain times, because of, everybody was quarantined, but Ann has a son who with really had to be careful. Yeah. With a lung disease. And so we had to really make sure we were quarantined and careful. And so there was a secret place where they could pass notes and mail. That was one of the highlights.
I think there was some secret romance
for sure.
Passed
for sure.
2 certain individuals.
Which I hope just keep carrying on, too. What else?
Oh, so many stories. It felt like a gift for me to be so isolated, but have such a connection with someone who came into my life right at the moment when I needed you. So it was a gift.
One of my favorite things was, I think we were a little bit out of COVID, or maybe it was even the year following, probably, when we had winter camps and had all the kids Sport camps.
I don't know how long that lasted, but it was fun while it did.
I think we called it camp, like Little Winter or something. Yeah. Anyway, So fun.
I still remember I found out early on in my last pregnancy that I was having twins, and I knew Lizzie had twins, and I went to her door and I said, Lizzie, come run stairs with me. I need to talk. And she opened her heart and her arms to me, and it made me feel like I could do anything. With every pregnancy, there's kind of a 1 in 4 chance that our child will have this lung disease that our son Sam has. And I just thought, how are we going to do this? We're already overwhelmed with 5 kids, adding 2 more to the mix with possibly life-altering condition and or maybe even incompatible with life. I thought, I don't know if I could do this, but you were the friend that helped me realize that with God, anything is possible. And I'm so grateful for that.
I remember that run. I will never forget that run. And you had thought about, let's maybe have one more baby. We had both kind of been going back and forth in each of our families, like
Yeah.
maybe we have another one. And so there was like such a joyful celebration and at the same time, like gravity to the discussion
Yeah.
of bringing another life into the world, but then finding out it was twins and I freaked out. And then I think I cried both. Like I was
think
so
we were
happy
both
and
in tears by the end.
we were both in tears, but thinking, and really this is something I wanted to have our conversation centered around today, just the gravity and joy of motherhood and the
Yes.
gift it is. But also it's a lot to have a human life entrusted to you. And for sure, in your case, knowing every pregnancy, every child may mean really, really high levels of care. And it may not, and you don't know, and you're just totally placing your trust in God. But to do that with 2 babies in that pregnancy was
It felt
amazing.
like a daunting task. Yeah, for sure. That has turned into one of the biggest blessings, as I'm sure your twins have for you. I thought about after that run together, I thought about you just had such a deep connection with God and with Christ. And I loved how you bring others along to Christ in your journey. And I think about God in terms of how he created the world. It wasn't from order. It was from chaos. It was from particles he brought together to create something beautiful. And I thought about our family at that moment and I'm like, this is beyond our capacity. And yet with God, with that same power that he created the earth, he can create something beautiful in our lives. And I trusted that if those babies would survive, he could make something beautiful. And you helped me see that. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, that was a little bit our family's different experience, but also the same, like they were born and it was pretty high risk.
Yeah,
and
it was so scary.
I remember thinking that same thing, like God knows like what the beauty can be. I don't, but I believe he's real. And inherent in saying that I believe he's real is also saying, I believe he cares and he has a plan and he cares about me. I'm actually his daughter. I'm not just some random creation that's not connected to him. I'm his daughter. So if he says this is good, it's going to be good. I hope I'm strong enough for it. But yeah.
I recently went to an engagement, a speaking thing at BYU. And after I had my little Eleanor in tow, my youngest twin, and I had this impression to go visit the Kershiznik exhibit that was at the MOA, at the Museum of Art at BYU one more time, even though I had just visited it prior. But I found as she was, dragging on my leg and crying, I thought, okay, I'm just going to see one part of the exhibit that I didn't see. And I'm so glad I did, because it talked about holy women and it had Kershiznik's depiction of holy women from the Bible and also, women in the mundane in modern times where they're finding lost things or making magic with their children or even dealing with several squabbling children who are crying all at the same time. There was a portrait of Ruth and of Eve. And I think about Ruth and her. One beautiful thing I've learned from you and from many women in my life is that you can create something beautiful within your family. As you focus on your family, you can also discover things about yourself as you contribute in the world. And when I looked at this picture of Ruth harvesting crops from this farm, she was living her life. She lost her husband. Her mother-in-law lost her husband. And in the process of figuring out where she wanted to go, she could have gone back to her people, but instead she stayed true to her mother-in-law and decided to join her on her journey. And in doing so, she met Boaz in the fields and, as it says in the Bible, became one of 5 women mentioned in Christ's genealogy. And you just think about, as we are a part of the beautiful work of motherhood, we find beautiful ways to contribute in society with our children and with that purpose in mind. There's another portrait of Eve holding the fruit. And I hadn't thought about this quite in this way until I saw this portrait of her holding that fruit with contemplative eyes, perhaps contemplating the decision she was making to partake of the fruit. Maybe we don't know what Eve knew at that time, but we know that she was a part of something great. And I think she maybe had a glimpse of what was to be and maybe understood a little bit that a savior would provide. I think we learn a little bit more about that, but that a savior would provide a way and would make up for our mistakes. And so as I saw these beautiful representations of women, I thought, what do I want to be as a woman? What do I want to do for my family? And as I focus on my family, how can I use unique gifts to build those around me as well?
So beautiful. I love the first thing you said going into that exhibit. It was called Holy Women.
Yeah.
All of these women, the women who had multiple children around and they're creating the magic or doing whatever. And I think growing up, the art that I saw that would depict holy women was pretty limited.
Yeah.
There wasn't the internet. So first of all, you only saw something if it was printed in a book or up on a wall.
Yeah.
So even that, it was just limited in what I saw in general. But most of them were really beautiful pictures of really sanitized versions of what women do.
Put together. And yeah,
Esther was in
exactly.
her robes. And I mean, Esther she was a queen, right? So that is probably what Esther looked like. But most of these women, when you think about what they actually were doing, like a Ruth, she was gleaning wheat in the field, right? Crops in the field. So she was dirty. You don't glean in the field in pristine white robes with beautiful plaited hair. That's just not what it would have looked like, right? But when I think about beautiful art, the women were all flawless and then doing these wonderful things. And interesting now to see that art come up and think about it. The women in the mundane is who he painted.
Exactly.
Everyday work, in the fields, making life decisions, surrounded by children. And that was his definition of the holy women, which is the type of women I've had on the show, right? It's not the women who were like removed from the everyday and do something great. It's the women who are doing the everyday, and that is the greatness.
I love what you just said. I listened to this recent TED Talk that Chris Shiznick gave at BYU, I think it was, but he talked about the creative process and how we are all agents, and it's a beautiful opportunity that we have to create our lives, and that just the innateness of being human is a creative process, and that we can take that innovative creativity when we confront hundreds of diversions in a day and make something beautiful out of them. And he talked about how he grew to find his voice through putting in the time, through putting in hours and hours of creating masterpieces. And he shared two insightful things. One about the power of writing, the power of jotting down ideas. And then the second one was the power of being willing to make mistakes. And when I met you, actually, this was such a gift to me. You were creating these small seed journals. And I simultaneously was pregnant with these twins, was so sick. Our son was on total lockdown with COVID. We were homeschooling, if you remember at the time. And I had this impression, as my husband gave me a blessing, he counseled me to strengthen my relationship with God. But also one thing he said that was interesting was he encouraged me to write and to write in my journal. And I did that with that Sweet Small Seed journal. And I still have that today, where it became my sacred space, where even though it felt impossible, I used moments of peace where I could write and where I could put down ideas and where I could connect with the scriptures and think about how I fit in with those people, but also how I fit in with my world today and with my family. And it became a sacred place for me.
I love that point. Especially as we think about these stories in the scriptures being told, they were told after the fact.
Yeah.
And so you could see the clarity. You could see the order from the chaos after, like, oh, well, of course she found Boaz. But Ruth didn't know she was going to find Boaz.
Right.
When she was out in the field, there was no like, this is how it's all going to work out. She was just doing the best she knew how to be loyal and be true to her mother-in-law and probably what felt like the right place in her heart. But I love this concept of writing. I think for me, I found the same thing where I don't really see what's happening. I'm in prayer and I'm pondering and in the middle of the mundane kind of working through what's going on in my life. But so often when I'm journaling weekly, I kind of see the pieces go together. I don't know what it is about that power of putting pen to paper. I see more than if I'm just thinking about it or reflecting on it.
And I think God blesses you and trusts you with more when you're willing to actually witness what you're living, right? And the people around you and how they make you better and how perhaps Christ enters that story.
Oh, beautiful. I hadn't even thought of that. That's like a sacrifice that brings that blessing.
Yeah.
For sure. Any tips for writing that were helpful for you? Like, do you have like a system you used in your writing? Was it mostly just stream of conscious free thoughts?
So I was diagnosed with cancer 3 years back. And this was right around the time of COVID. But at this point, my twins were 1. And I decided that I wanted to continue writing, and I wanted to write it for my posterity because I didn't know what life was going to bring. And I felt like it was a way that I could communicate some of my deepest thoughts surrounding scripture, surrounding my relationship with God and Christ. And I really, I felt like I was willing to take a risk in sharing that with my kids, and also sometimes through Instagram, but also in just trusting myself enough to organize my thoughts on paper, even if it was just for myself. I felt like I came to know who I was in a way that I couldn't in any other way.
So good. Such a special tool. And I love your thoughts so much, the ones I get to be privy to on Instagram. And it's like you've brought back the best of Instagram. It's just
I don't know about that, but
for sure, 100%. It's why everybody, I think, jumped on in the beginning, because it was way more unfiltered. And it's just like pictures of your life and then a takeaway where you saw God in it. And it's seeing everyday life of motherhood and womanhood from this lens of, and this is what God is always doing. Or look,
Right.
Here's another theme in the scripture that was just like what was happening in my life, or an insight. And there's no trying to, again, what I said, I guess, just starting this episode, trying to be someone to impress people. It's like, here's God and here's my life, and I'm at peace
the
with
mistakes and the mess and the, yeah, for sure. I think about just that second part of that Kirsten shared of being willing to make mistakes. I think in that messy process of writing, you realize that life isn't perfect and it's not going to go as planned. And those diversions are part of life, right? Those, wow, we're going to have twins, or wow, I never anticipated cancer would be a part of my journey. All those things. And those diversions are a part of the plan. They're not actually mistakes in the plan. They're part of those parts of us that make us real and make us human and make us draw us closer to our Savior Jesus Christ. And so I love that in the writing, in the creating, in the forming our lives, we need to be willing to make mistakes and to go out on a limb. When I was diagnosed with cancer, this sounds trivial, but I created a room in my house. It was just my family room, so everyone could see it. And I used Facebook Marketplace, and I gathered all sorts of things. I gathered this like long lounge chair that was part of a sectional, but I used it as a solo piece. And then a mid-century modern couple of couches, which didn't fit the vibe going on. And then also a painting that I could afford from Target, Studio McGee. And it was kind of the picture of this horizon, where the horizon meets land, meets sea, and you didn't know quite where one started and one ended. But it became this sacred space for me, even though it was not put together. It was not Lizzie Jensen's beautiful Pinterest home, but it was a sacred place for me. And it reminded me of the importance of being willing to take a risk and being willing to make perhaps a mistake in the process of building something beautiful. But that became a place where I communed with God, and where I brought people into my home when I was going through this cancer diagnosis, and when people would come and welcome my twins into the world, and it became a really sacred and holy place.
I think it's funny you mentioned my Pinterest home, which you know how much I love decorating, and I don't know why.
You create beautiful spaces in a really
I love it so much
way. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I also think that sometimes we try to create something so perfect and beautiful for a feeling. Every home I've done before I've like physically created it, I've written down what is the feeling I want it to feel like. But I've noticed like the feeling of love or welcome or sacredness, or a place where you can really find community, whatever that feeling is, most often it's not in the perfectly designed homes that you feel it. And that's not to say you can't feel it in a perfectly designed home, but it's often in the homes that are like just collected rooms and a little bit random where you find it more. I don't know why. I don't know why it happens that way, but I've been to so many friends' homes, because really that's how most homes look, right? Like,
it's true. It's the reality of
that is the
life.
Reality of life. And it's beautiful to think through, if what I'm really just trying to create is a feeling, maybe what it looks like doesn't even matter that much. Maybe that's not the point.
Exactly.
But we're seeking after this feeling that we typically feel in a marketing ad or as something when they're like, oh, see, this is peace. okay, well, then I need to look like her and have a house that looks like that. No, actually, I can find that right now. I actually don't even have to change anything.
Right.
I just have to get my kids together and be in the same room for a couple of hours with no distractions. Wow, I don't even need a makeover. Maybe just in my schedule. Maybe that was it. And you have taught me that in really, really beautiful ways to just be okay. Just be okay. This is as good
That's
as it
kind
needs
of
to be
you.
right now. Because I can feel things right now as I am. I can do the thing. I think people are drawn to you because of that. And that's a unique gift. A unique gift that I don't think a lot of women have, but could have. Like, I
Yeah.
think we all could have that if we just took the mask off and put the pretense away and say, I just want you to come
This
to
is
my
what I have
home.
to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And be okay with that, right?
Yep.
My husband often asks me after a practice session with one of my kids, he says, is this really worth it? Is it worth it to do these instruments and put hours and hours and to perhaps sometimes create a negative spirit in the home? And I think it is in some ways, in the sense that when I encourage my kids to contribute and to visit a woman who's on her deathbed and play music that is imperfect with mistakes, or to play in sacrament meeting, our church meetings, or to visit the old folks home and play for them, our offering isn't always perfect, right? There's missteps and wrong notes and perhaps a negative spirit a time or two in the home. But what you offer is something beautiful for another person to receive it. And together you form a relationship that's really raw and authentic and beautiful in the process. So I love
So
that.
we've had a few professional musicians on this show. Maria Clayton, our
Yes,
good
a dear friend of
friend,
ours.
and Jenny Oaks Baker, and we talked about practicing and talked about excellence and also embodies excellence. It's funny we're talking about this, but you also were a Division I tennis player, and I mean, like, Anne has. It's not like you're just like, however life is, it's great. However this goes, it's great. Like, you have a very high level of excellence in who you are, and you're learning and so many things. So that's funny that we're saying this in some regards. But what I love that you're saying about even music, which was very similar to what you said about your home, the purpose of music isn't actually perfection.
No.
The point is also a feeling and a way to build community. And it's funny, like, all of our kids are in music as well, and I love music, but they get to practice at the school, so I've taken a little shortcut around the
Which I would
really
welcome that shortcut. That's beautiful.
those tricky. I know, because I played piano growing up, and those practice sessions are hard. It's the
Yeah.
hardest stuff. Anything that takes constant repetition is hard. It's demanding. It's challenging.
Yeah.
But thinking about what is the real purpose of music, to serve and to love and to build community, well, then it's okay. Get good enough that you can do that and start using it right away, not when you're to a level that's a professional that can play in Carnegie Hall.
Right.
What if that's not the point? Some
Right.
people will reach that and create beautiful community because of
Right.
that as well. But if you can share along the way in, on the deathbed of someone you love, or like you said, on this old folks home or whatever it is, like, we can start sharing so much earlier than at the point of perfection.
Right. And I think it pertains to so much, so far beyond musical talents, right? Our offering is often full of mistakes. And that's where, as I stood looking at these paintings that to me looked perfect, the beauty comes when you're willing to go on a limb, when you make a mistake and you have to bring Christ into that story, right? You have to invite a savior who makes up the difference or who fills in the gaps. We had an experience with my daughter, Claire. She was on a bike with her sister driving up to her friend's house, and it was an electric bike, and they both had helmets on, but they fell over after hitting a divot, and she suffered an avulsion injury, which is when something churns at the skin and goes deep enough to the bone. And so we found ourselves in the burn unit for what we thought was a short stay, but turned into a month-long ICU stay in the burn unit. And the surgeon at first went to put a skin graft over the top, took the donor site, and was going to place it on. And she noticed that there was a clot coming out of the injury. And she
and you're motioning down to your lower leg for those of you listening.
Yeah.
So this was
her ankle.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
And she just hurt her ankle severely. And she realized, oh, I can't put that that graft site on. And so the surgeon came out and spoke with me. She was nearly in tears. She said, I made a mistake. I took the donor site prior to understanding the severity of the injury. And I realized I have to remedy this. What should we do? And we together, she said, let's put the site back on. And we're going to have to go in and do what they call a muscle flap and cut up and take part of her calf muscle and wrap it around that ankle bone to create vascular tissue so you could then stick the skin on top. Because without that vascular tissue, that blood source, there was no way that skin graft would take. And so it became a much longer stay and a much more invasive process. But the beauty in that analogy of there's mistakes, it's messy. But if we include Christ, our source of strength, our living water, that source of blood, we can make far more out of this mess than we could on our own when we include him as the foundation. And that was the source of blood for that site to then take root and for her to now function and play soccer and live a full life with the function of an ankle and a foot that works properly.
What a beautiful story. And your Instagram is full of all sorts of things like this where it's just like, whoa, how did you think that deeply and beautifully about something? And how were you also, I think this is maybe an important point for women and mothers to hear. How were you not so disappointed and annoyed at the thing that happened?
For sure there was that.
Well, there was that. But at some point you were able to be open enough to say, teach me in this.
Yeah.
Like it's not wrong to be frustrated. You've seen me frustrated plenty of times and not wrong to be annoyed, and setbacks feel like real setbacks. And when you have lots of kids, especially, it's like, I don't have time for this. But then to be able to get to a point to say, what can you teach me in this moment?
What can you learn out of it? Yeah. And I think that's what writing does for me, is it helps me internalize the world around me and the experiences that I have in the scriptures and with people. I just came from this funeral of a friend of ours. Her father-in-law passed away, and he lived life big. He was an idea guy, and he was a creative mind that created beauty wherever he went in his relationships and his adventures. And he found miracles in the mundane. And that's what I think, whatever that looks like for everyone. For me, it was writing at that point in my life when I met you. For someone else, it might be a creative outlet. It might be a podcast. It might be whatever God has inspired you to do. And I think it looks different for everyone.
For sure. And will change every few years, because as women, that's what happens. It's a new phase and a new thing, and we evolve. But I do love that thought. I think for everyone, I want to encourage that. Like if you don't have a writing practice, I do think that's something that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially if you can embrace it with the imperfection that you're talking about. Not to have something polished, not even necessarily to share, not even necessarily to keep if you don't want to keep it.
Right.
You can write and burn it if you feel like I just need to process and get things out. But writing is so powerful. It's changed my life for sure too.
I agree.
So this concept of the mundane, do you have anything else you can share along the line? So again, Anne is the mother of 7 children with a set of twins at the end, which is amazing. And her children are incredible. You have raised some really, really special little humans, you and Jeff.
You're sweet. I feel the same about yours.
But motherhood is a lot of the mundane. That's
Definitely.
normal. Do you have any tips for those mothers listening in? I think I've had all sorts of women on the show, women who are in full-time professional careers, women who have the applause of millions, women who are very little known, especially for that woman listening in who's like, I don't know if what I do matters.
Yeah.
I'm home with my kids and I believe in motherhood. That's why I did this, or at least I want to believe in the power of motherhood, but sometimes it feels hard and tricky, and I won't have a podcast, or I won't have someone applauding me. Like, what advice would you give?
I love that question. As I think about, day-to-day stuff is messy, right? With 7 kids, it doesn't look perfect, and it's not always orderly. We don't always know exactly what we're doing with our day. But one thing that cancer has given me is eyes to see beauty in the small moments with your kids. That even though it can be hard and it can be ugly, creating a space where you can connect with each of your children on the daily basis in a powerful way. It doesn't have to be long. It can be a short moment where you look in their face and you smell the Cheeto breath or you wipe off the popsicle smudge and make a dance party in the kitchen when you feel frustrated as you're cleaning and no one's cooperating. Just create those moments where you can actually enjoy the role that you have as a mother. It's a gift truly to be a mother. And I think it's creating those magic moments. That's what really, really counts.
So I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
We used to have 5 kids before the twins. And sometimes the thought of 5 one-on-ones, again, you said they're short, they're small, but I'm always fueled by those one-on-ones. Like I don't leave depleted from them.
It
Even
gives
if
you
it was
more energy, 100%.
gives you more energy.
Yeah.
Do you think, is that a focus of yours every day? Like one touch point per child per day?
It is, definitely. I remember a moment with my twins where they were 1 and I was navigating this whole diagnosis process. And I thought, I was putting them to bed and I thought, how am I going to look at them in the face and think about all the memories and all the milestones in their life that I might not be a part of? And I committed right then and there that I was going to make the most of every exchange, every opportunity with those kids. And it doesn't happen all the time and every day. But I feel like just having that vision of that we're mortal, that life ends for all of us. That's, the end for all of us could be tomorrow. We never know. But it has helped me live more in the present with my kids and to find those slivers of time. Like Jeff and I traveled through Europe with our kids a year ago when the twins were just little. And it was, as I think you did the same thing. He is a professor. And so we travel sometimes with study abroads or taking students to Ghana for certain things. And it's a beautiful opportunity, but it looked so messy as we schlepped 7 kids through Paris with beat up suitcases that I thought was a brilliant idea to all have carry-ons when it wasn't. It was the worst idea ever. But every day, as he looked so frazzled and questioned why we were doing this, I looked at him and said, it's about the moment. It's about finding those slivers of time. I think you can find even a second with every child throughout every day. And that's what makes motherhood worth it, right? Are those small moments as you try and navigate the schedules and the routines and the practicing and all that. Even in those moments when you're so frustrated, just to turn it off for a minute and connect and look into their eyes for just a moment and give them a hug when you don't want to give them a hug. But then the joy and the love emanates from you because it comes. It's a blessing that comes, I think, from heaven.
I want to emphasize what we said one more time. If anyone missed it, those one-on-one moments are life-giving. And I think knowing like Jesus is the life and the light, that if something is bringing life to us in our motherhood, those are probably the moments where he is.
Definitely.
And so think through those and attach to those and be more intentional about those. There's a lot of other moments that aren't life-giving that maybe give up on sometimes if they're not, right? But those one-on-ones are everything.
And you can make it a part of what you're doing, right? Like you don't have to add on additional things.
Yeah.
It's just in the moment, capitalizing on that moment. Maybe you're washing dishes together, right? Doing tasks and performing things that need to be done, but making it a little bit more magical, maybe.
I remember one time reading in the Bible about Jesus just saying like, become as a little child in that invitation. And obviously, if you're a mother or if you've ever been around kids or have heard people talk about kids, there's so many things that are not the goal of life, right? That children can do. And the tantrums and the whatever, like they're still a human being that hasn't yet been refined and known how to interact and whatever. So it's just taking some moments thinking about, so what did Jesus actually mean when he said that? And I think that's a really rich area of study. And I've studied that a couple different times. But at one point, the thought I had was very similar to what we were just talking about, is that children are present. They don't think that much about the past, and they really don't think that much about the future. They have a really unique ability to be here in the now.
To be present, 100%.
And I think about God, how something we can't really conceptualize, but that there is no time, that all is present to him. And I think part of the gift of being a mother and learning about who God is that he gives us this invitation to just be present. Yeah. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And when we do that with a child, especially, I think we get a little glimpse of Godhood, that it's just the joy and the feeling and even the sorrow and the grief.
Yeah.
The intensity of emotion in the now is something to me very godlike.
Yeah. There's a movie with Anne Hathaway, I don't even remember, Transcendent or something, but where she talks about love transcends time and space. She's, I think, searching for her husband on another galaxy. I don't even remember the premise of the movie, but just that kids are able to love in a way so unconditionally and so transparent and so raw and real and present that I want to try and emulate. It's a beautiful way to live and a beautiful way to love. And I think love is at the center of that, right?
So beautiful. Yep. And what a gift, again, to be a mom and be firsthand witness of how children do it. If we're not too busy to notice and be there.
Exactly. It's a gift.
You are such a gift and an example of motherhood. Any other thoughts you would share? I mean, some of the things that I had thought about coming into this interview that have been so inspiring to me. One is just your ability to serve. I don't think I've ever seen anyone serve. Maybe my younger sister, Sarah, she's like you actually, where it's just always like, where is the need and how can I fill it? And we're on like a group me with a bunch of women in this area. And I always see Ann Bednar's name pop up. Most of us are popping up like, does anyone have a good dentist recommendation? And Ann is like, well, I'm helping this refugee family. Does anyone have a crib? Does anyone have this? And I'm like, man, she has 7 kids who were involved in all sorts of things and leading this beautiful life. What role does service play in your life? And how do you make that such a big priority, knowing you have so much on your plate already?
I think, I mean, you're kind to say those things about me. Service is an important part of our lives, as I've tried to make it be. But I think, again, I feel like this cancer journey has helped me realize what's most important, and that is giving of ourselves and creating relationships that last. And so with my kids, I've intentionally thought, like, as opportunities come up, I think, how can I bring them into this experience? How can I make this holiday more meaningful by bringing a service aspect into it? I think I remember when we were neighbors, we rallied the troops to create a very poor presentation of Christmas carols with our limited talents musically. I don't even remember where we went. Was it like
I think we went to a old folks home.
Was it an old folks home?
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think the gifts that we can give to the world are not measured by how beautiful they are or how perfect, but by the people we bring along with it, right? And so every day I try to think of opportunities to involve my kids in those journeys.
It's so powerful. Again, I'm thinking of some verses in the Bible and where Jesus Christ is talking about when he comes again and how we'll know who he is and how he'll know us, and we'll have that relationship. And one of them is, those who know me were the ones who clothed me and fed me and met me in prison. And everyone was so confused. Like, we never saw you hungry. We've actually never seen you thirsty. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he said, anytime you find someone in those circumstances, it's as if you were finding me there. And I love that.
That's beautiful.
Like you saying that about motherhood, if we want our children to know Jesus, go let them find him in the people they're serving. I've never thought about that with my children.
That's so beautiful. It was interesting. After being diagnosed with cancer, I was on the cusp of being treated for the cancer, for this non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with chemotherapy. But I had a new doctor who shed new eyes on my story, and he said, let's get a GI consult and let's see if there's something underlying this. And I received the diagnosis recently of celiac disease. But at the time, simultaneously, I had touched base with a friend who's running a clinic downtown where they served an underserved population. It's a free clinic where people can come and receive healthcare. And I'm a nurse by profession, and I love giving in that way. Having had all these experiences with my family, with my son's lung disease, with my cancer, with now my daughter who has celiac, myself as well, I think about how I would love to return to the profession of nursing to give and provide care and hope and love and to go places with patients that I didn't dare to go before. And so this opportunity came to serve in this clinic. And I thought, yes, let's do it. And so I broached it with my husband and we talked about it. And I realized, like, on the cusp of possibly getting treated for my cancer and celiac, that it maybe wasn't the right time. But I can find a way to incorporate that by taking my kids to see this clinic and by volunteering once a month, and maybe not taking it on as my project right now, but finding ways that I can still be a part of it for when my twins go to school, and I can go back and I can serve regularly there, and I can go places with those people where they need someone to help see answers to their problems, or possibly help them find hope.
So beautiful, and so much wisdom. If our bodies could do all that our hearts long to do, we would be very, very busy. And but
somehow you find the capacity to do so much. But
I look at you and say the same, like, what in the world? How is she?
But I think the beauty is finding those slivers of opportunities where you may not be able to take the whole thing on, right?
Yeah.
But you can provide glimpses for your kids and yourself, where you can give a few moments in a week where you can go tutor, or you can go just maybe understand what the clinic is about and see what tools you can bring from another friendship that could bless that.
So wise. And
offering.
As women, it's easy to be like, either I'm this or I'm that. I'm all in on career or not. And that's really great advice to say, is there a third option? Is there a fourth option? Maybe you're pondering praying only about in or out, but maybe there's something else, like you said, that's a little bit in and a little taste of it that may prepare you for something in the future,
right,
or not, or just help your kids right now or help you right now. But open your mind to, are there 5 other options I could also be thinking about? And even ask someone, like, I'm only seeing these 2 choices. Are there other choices I should consider in the realm of these possibilities? That's such good advice for women navigating lots of things,
Yeah.
Well, you have given us such a glimpse of what it means to be a holy woman. I love all of these things that you shared about creating the order from the chaos. And that is what we're here in a holy way, and to remembering that we don't have to do it perfectly. In fact, we can't. That's the point. The mistakes are where we meet Jesus Christ, and the power of service in everyday moments. I want to end by asking a final question that I love to ask. What do you hope your legacy is?
I love this question because I feel like when you have cancer running through your veins and you're aware of your mortality, it brings a beauty to living that you can find in no other way. And there's our dear friend's daughter played Emily in our town. It was a musical or a play production by a bunch of high school students. And I was so moved by her character. Emily, she gets the chance to relive one day, and it's a mundane day with her children, where I believe her daughter was having her birthday, or she was having the birthday. And she shares this insight. She said, do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute. And I think that's what I would want my legacy to be, is one where I'm willing to go out on a limb, where I'm willing to make mistakes and partner with Christ to create something more beautiful than I could create on my own, to help my kids witness the world around them, witness the relationships that are so rich, witness a Savior who atoned for their sins and who can partner with them in creating a beautiful life of their own. I love this idea of when we co-create with God, our masterpiece can be far greater than it would be on its own.
So beautiful. Oh, Anne, once again, you've left me wanting to be just a better woman and a better mother and a better disciple, and to just really live in those minutes. So thank you for today.
Thank you.
If this episode spoke to you, go leave a review wherever you listen. It helps more people find stories like this, and we need more of this kind of light in the world. And friend, just in case no one told you lately, you matter. Your story matters. You're doing better than you think you are. Until next week, lean in and live into your purpose today.